Welcome to the Black Women's Wellness Podcast. I'm Deja Love, and this is a podcast where we amplify Black women's voices as we discuss ways to manage stress and maintain our well-being. We want to ensure that all Black women live productive, meaningful, and robust lives unhinged by stress. We are excited you joined us and tuned in. So listen, sit back, comment, and let's get into today's episode. I am really excited. I say this every podcast, but I'm always excited. But really today I am coming with our guest, Adaeze, as we're going to dive into the topic of mental wellness for Black women and how we prioritize this, and then really talking about a polarizing topic. Certainly of late, Megan Thee Stallion, and last year she created, it's called Bad Bitches Have Bad Days Too. And it's an amazing resource, incredibly robust, that provides mental wellness support. So we're going to get into that. First, Adaeze, how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
Doing well. Yeah, I'm doing great, Deja. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm very excited to talk about Black women and mental illness because I feel like it's a topic that's often forgotten. As you are very well aware, Black women occupy a very specific niche in our society and a lot of the responsibilities that they have to uphold. So I'm super excited to talk about this and get into the grits of it.
Wonderful. We are happy you're here. We love to start off this question with our guests is, you're a busy professional. You do a lot. How do you make time for your own well-being, your community care, and rest?
I mean, we are certainly having a, one-to-one conversation and being completely honest about everything. I will certainly say it's hard, and I don't at this moment. There's just a lot that needs your attention. I mean, you're talking about family, you're talking about romantic relationships, you're talking about professional relationships. It's just a never-ending list of things that you need to equally pay attention to. I think one of the things that I've been discovering and implementing in the last year has been setting boundaries for my time, because I'm realizing that a lot of the time I give a lot. And just by doing that, I always feel depleted at the end of the day. And I'm learning that by setting those concrete boundaries and obviously being the mean person, because for so long, when you're the person that's always given, you're always there and you're the reliable one, as they like to call it, and you start saying no, you become the mean person. But I'm also finding that by putting those boundaries in place, I'm much more happier. But, what do I do and how does it work? I'm still discovering it, to be honest with you. And, the setting of my boundaries may be flexible for mom especially, but, it's just one of those things where I'm still learning through it. I'm still learning what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, no, that's real. Thank you for that perspective and just being very vulnerable that it's a work in progress. And that's really what the Black Women's Wellness Podcast is, that our goal is not perfection, it's progress. Perfection is a myth. And you talked about that you're implementing boundaries. And in doing that, there's pushback. Folks are labeling you as the mean one. So tell me, how are you navigating that experience of people that you thought were really for you in your corner? And it's always surprising, and I don't know why, but when we set boundaries and the backlash that comes, how are you managing that?
I lean into it. Yeah, I'm the mean one. I will be the mean one. I will certainly lean into it. I think that the thing is that, when you are setting boundaries, it's a consistent effort. And it's so hard to just want to relinquish and say, okay, I'll do this. Okay, I'll do that. But you have to push back as well. And like I said, if I have to lean into this myth, and I would call it a myth because it's just setting boundaries and people get uncomfortable when you do set boundaries. If I'm leaning into the myth of a mean person, then so be it. I will be that mean person until you understand that, hey, my time is important as well. I will help where I can. If I can't, you should be okay with me saying no. You should. And you should receive that and just be okay with that. I think one of the things that I have been trying to also understand is that culturally, I'm Nigerian. And I'm also a first daughter in my family. So with that comes very heavy expectations. And, you know, an additional layer to that is I'm also an immigrant to this country. And for so long, I have always been my mom's second hand. I've always been the person that's always helped her out with things. And just getting into adulthood and learning that, okay, you did that for her then. Now it's time for you to start doing things for yourself. It is hard. I wouldn't necessarily say that people aren't in my corner. I would more so say that it's a case of folks understanding what this boundary setting is. Because again, culturally, I'm Nigerian. We don't talk about mental illness. We don't talk about setting boundaries. We only talk about respect your elders, respect your parents. And anything that goes against that is just seen as your rude child or whatever the case may be. So I think it's a learning process for me, but it's also a learning process for my family as well, because it's sort of like we're trying to rewrite culturally what it means to be a Nigerian first daughter.
Oh, wow. So there's so much I want to unpack there. First, would you be willing, what are some of these boundaries that you're setting?
So, you know, I am still at home, unfortunately. But
you're saving money, so that's not a bad thing.
Saving money. Yeah, we're certainly saving money. I mean, this economy isn't doing too well, so we'll see how we go there. But, you know, being at home has been hard because one of the best ways to set boundaries, especially with my parents, is a physical hard boundary, as in removing myself from the home and not being here. But because I'm still here, one of the things that I have constantly communicated to my parents is my time. So I typically work from home 2 days out of the week. And for them, when they see me, they're thinking, oh, she's available, so now she can do whatever we want her to do. And it's like, no. From 9 to 6 or 9:30 to 6 or whatever the time may be, there's always flexible in my end. You cannot ask me for anything. You cannot ask me to do anything. Even if you see that I come down for a break, that's exactly what it is. It's a break. It's not time for you to now start asking me, hey, I want you to take me here. I want you to take me there. No. I'm on a clock. You have to respect that. And then it's also a case of, you know, when the weekend comes around, and of course you've had a busy week and you just want your weekend to just do what you want to do, right? It's also a case of saying, hey, I am available, but these are the times I'm available. And if you have something that you want to do, tell me in advance so that I can incorporate you into this time. Wow, it's been so hard.
I bet. I bet.
Because to them, it's sort of like you're saying no.
Right.
You know, it's like, no, I don't want to do that. Rather than I will help you, but understand these are the perimeters of how I can help you. And if you're not okay with that, then, hey, you might want to go do this thing on your own.
Right.
It's very, very tough because, again, they have grown up with that cultural value of, you know, as a child, you help your parent no matter what. And it's also a case of, yeah, I get that. But again, as I mentioned to you earlier, it will not be at the detriment of myself.
Exactly. And that's what boundaries are. That it's the duality of you respect and you hold space for your parents, and you also cannot have your own mental wellness suffer because of historical and cultural expectations.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think hearing this, especially as you identify as a Nigerian, you're at home, many people will listen to this and will really feel seen. Because sometimes I think in the 2023, people like to place shame and like to place guilt and labels. Oh, you still live at home versus you live at home. You're saving money, you're reducing your debt, you're a part of a community, you have access there. I mean, it doesn't have to be a negative thing.
No, I quite agree. I mean, I think, you know, as you are very well aware, Adaeze, the area that we live in is very status driven. And it is unfortunate. It is unfortunate in that instance, but I think it's also important that we start being real about where we are in life. I think too often we get into this space where it's a competition when it really shouldn't be. Everyone gets to a point in their life where they're struggling with whatever it may be. And we should be able to form a community around each other to support each other. But as I said, this area, unfortunately, thrives on status and competition. And unfortunately, a lot of folks are unable to be real about what their current economic and or professional and or romantic or whatever the case may be, what that current status is for them. And, for me, I just don't know how else to live than to say, hey, this is where I am in life and I'm okay with it. But, it doesn't necessarily mean this is a forever thing. I obviously have things that I'm working towards, but this is just my current state and I accept that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love hearing that. That's so beautiful because I think of it, and looking at my life as a Black American, not, my lineage is a transatlantic Middle Passage. So I don't definitively know where in the continent we come from. And I do understand, I extrapolate, the cultural significance of as a Nigerian, you're staying home. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's why rush? Like you get out on your own. Why go be quick to pay rent, get a mortgage? You don't need that. I'm all for staying, paying off your student loans. There's nothing. And that's a different cultural approach as Black Americans where it's the antithesis, at least for me. And I don't want to, we're not a monolith, so I don't want to generalize, but my upbringing is you 18, you out the house, you get a job. There's always pros and cons. The pro, certainly at a very early age, you learn independence and freedom and being self-sufficient and leadership and all of these great skills. But the detriment is you grow up incredibly fast. All of this responsibility is placed really early where I think about other groups of people that don't have that. And it's a very different trajectory. So I'm thankful for you sharing that.
Yeah. I mean, Deja, you did mention something about, the fast track to growing up early. Do you think now that you're an adult, and
I love it. You asking me questions.
Yeah. I mean, do you think at this point that it actually helped you out in the end versus you maybe felt that, okay, maybe it was too fast and we could have had a medium where there were certain places where I did have responsibilities that taught me what it meant to be an adult versus now it's like, okay, you're 18, you're on your own, figure it out.
That's a great question. And you're the first to pose a question to me. So I'm so thankful for that. It's really a matter of perspective that you can look at it. If that's, as you articulated, if that's the perspective of, the end justifying the mean, then yes, was successful. But in the work of the Black women's wellness and my own healing and liberation, as I'm in therapy and in couples counseling with my husband, unpacking that, having to be an adult really fast, there's other traumas that come with that, the psychological term enmeshment trauma, where as a part of your family and your parents, you're viewed as an extension, not as an independent person, that intellectually they know you're an independent person, but it's, you're here. And similar, it sounds like what you were saying, you're here to support us. You're here to fulfill our goals and our desires and our hopes and our dreams and be just another appendage for who mom and dad, auntie, uncle are. And that, that we're unpacking that. And so that's the other challenge. But then it's also talking about mental wellness and living a soft life. Some of that is taken away because you're so conditioned to solving on your own, being independent, not asking for help, not having the option or privilege of having help, but having to figure it out yourself. It's our lives, pros and cons, that it's all a part of my journey and my story, and I'm learning to embrace it. But it's also, I look at our white counterparts, they don't have that experience. If they are on their own, their parents are paying their rent, their mortgage, their down payment, their wedding, all of these things that are not generally a part of us, the totality of Black people.
And not talked about as well. Yeah.
So it's just, and like you're saying, where you are is you're trying to end generational cycles, generational trauma, and for the next generation, create your own legacy that is different from your parents, what they may even project onto you and your siblings. And, Yes, I mean, it's a complex answer to your question, but yes, it has helped me be a business owner, wife, all these things. But I also am challenging everyday society's definition of this because white supremacy has indoctrinated us with thinking that it has to be the degrees from the schools and the disciplines. And it's just, it doesn't need to be that, you know? So I love the
and
question.
an additional layer to that is the patriarchy as well.
Yes.
Where as women, we are expected to take on a role.
Yeah.
Very specific role where at this point feels like we are the ones doing all of the work. But I'm sure we're going to get into that.
I love the fluidity of this conversation. And as you talked about all the roles that you wear, a part of one of those roles is the work that you do with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. Tell us, what do you do there and what is your role?
Yeah, and I think to really get to where the role is, a bit of background story would be helpful.
Yeah.
So about, I think it's going to be maybe if my math is correct at this point, 12 or so years ago, when I graduated from undergrad, I fell into depression, very deep depression, to the point of I was considering suicidal ideations, multiple suicidal ideations that I actually carried out, but were unsuccessful. And so I knew there was something that was wrong. I just didn't know what it was. And luckily for me, I was able to connect with the hotline, the mental health hotline, the national hotline. And I called that number and they connected me to a NAMI organization. At the time, I was still here, but then I went to graduate school in Macon, Georgia. So I was then connected with the Georgia NAMI organization there. And so I volunteered for a little while I was there. And then when I came back from graduate school, I joined NAMI PGC. So that is the local county chapter for the national NAMI organization. So we have a national organization called NAMI, and then we have local chapters. So it sort of kind of goes like national, state, and then like counties. So I am currently affiliated to the Prince George's County NAMI chapter. And when I started with that chapter, I started as a volunteer, as someone that was a peer to others that were also going through mental illness. So because I went through, and still, I'm not going to say it's a case of I'm cured and I'm like, everything is great. It's an everyday thing. You have things in place that you implement whenever you feel as if, hey, this is getting too much. I need to do something that's going to help me relieve the stress or whatever the case may be for the individual. For me individually, I know what my triggers are, and I'm always constantly checking for those. In any case, I joined as a volunteer, and part of that volunteerism was doing peer-to-peer sessions with other folks. And I've recently just been confirmed to the board of directors for the NAMI PGC.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm super excited about my new role where, I'm certainly going to be focusing on youth and also focusing on Black women's mental health, because right now with NAMI, what we do is we serve as I would put it, as a clearinghouse where we have resources for folks that may need mental health resources. So we don't necessarily have specifics per se. We do have sessions for families of folks that have people that are experiencing mental illness, and or for veterans. And we sort of kind of have some things for like youths and things like that, but nothing granular to the sense of, okay, we're going to focus on Black women's health now. So I'm hoping that I can bring all of that to our local chapter to see where we can implement specifics for folks that really need it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Congratulations, Adaeze. That is huge. That's amazing. I love that you saved that for us recording this episode. That is amazing. I'm so excited for you and your role and your position of influence to really change some policies, legislation. That is amazing. And I also, as I say that, I have to hold space. I really appreciate you sharing. I mean, most people do not share as candidly. And I thank you for really just being so vulnerable and knowing that our listeners and audience are going to hear this and they're going to identify themselves in you. And so I already know people are going to be reaching out to you like, oh, I need so we'll get to that at the end. But thank you. Really, I I don't want to underscore, because just like you said, we are in a new year and we need to do what has not been done. And sometimes that's having very deep conversations where we're not surface level, we're getting vulnerable. And I get, you have to choose where and when to be vulnerable, because not everyone can hold that and respect it and be really gracious with that vulnerability. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I want to, as you are in this new role, how do you think NAMI is going to amplify Black women's wellness, given that the national average for behavioral health challenges, anxiety, depression, suicide are increasing? And on a main stage, of course, we're seeing celebrities, and we have to say, yes, when celebrities are having suicidal ideations and death by suicide, who have access to every imaginable resource, that is only going to be magnified us who do not yet have access to those resources. So how is NAMI looking to, in your role, address that and really tangibly be a part of a solution? Because it sounds like through your experience, it was a life source for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for NAMI PGC, Prince George's County, we're still working through that. And you mentioned, having celebrities that are able to amplify that message. I think that is certainly a route that we can look at. But it may be a bit of a challenge because, as I noted earlier, we are in a county where status is what drives everything. So there might be some barriers in finding folks that are of a status that are willing to be vulnerable and say, hey, I went through a mental illness episode or I'm currently dealing with mental illness and I'm willing to be your ambassador. But at a national level, I know that NAMI National has partnered with Taraji P. Henson, and she has been our ambassador for the last couple of years now. And she has been doing a good job in terms of advocating for mental illness for everyone and for Black women as well. But locally, that's where the work is important, at least for me. And I think we're still thinking through that. How can we amplify Black women's wellness, and who can we use as our ambassador to amplify that message for us?
Yes. Yeah. And that is a good point, as we talked at the start, an unexpected, and I say in quotes because it really shouldn't be unexpected, but Megan Thee Stallion being a champion for mental wellness, and her website, again, bad bitches have bad days too. I know some folks will be like, oh, the word, settle and sit with that, why that activates you. Because again, her intent is saying she's on top of in her career, in her field. Yes, she's incredibly polarizing for many, but she talks about her struggle with anxiety and depression and has created at the website, we'll link in the show notes, resources to everything, therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black men, all these great things. How do you think that, you have alluded to this, the PG, the local chapter, trying to incorporate some of these unexpected avenues that can really just, bring it to more light?
Yeah. Firstly, I wasn't even aware that she did this. So that's actually quite a shock to me. But, I think given the current circumstances of what's going on with her and the court case with Tory Lanez, it makes sense. Like a lot of things make sense. And if no one else, I think she'd be the perfect advocate at this moment anyway. I don't know if it should always be a case of someone that's unexpected versus someone that a lot of folks identify with. And I think people identify with Megan Thee Stallion. She is a woman that, firstly, I don't think a lot of people recognize this and or speak about this. She is college educated. She received her bachelor's in healthcare administration.
That's true. I forget about that. I think that was last year, right?
Yeah, it was last year. So she is a college educated Black woman that entered the entertainment business and rose to the top. So I think a lot of people can identify with that because more often than not, people will be like, well, why do you need to go into entertainment? You have a degree. Just go work with a degree. And or, what is this degree going to do for you? Specifically, given that she got in healthcare administration, which, that's a story that someone really needs to ask her about. Like, hey, that specific degree. But anyways, to have that degree and for her to continue to work in the industry, because mind you, she was very well established by the time she graduated. So there was a case of she was determined to finish. And there's also a case of she's doing something that no one has seen before. You know, you're able to see yourself as a Black woman. As we all know, a lot of Black women are very educated. Mm-hmm. You know, you see a Black woman that is college educated, that is doing what she loves. And that, you know, having that degree is not, you know, either, as I would like to put it, a setback and or anything that's a hindrance to where she is. She got the degree and then she's saying, hey, I'm still going to go and pursue this thing. Right. So I think with Meg Thee Stallion, and where I would make that correlation as to what NAMI PGC will eventually do, is that we want to find folks that others can identify with. We want to find folks that others can identify their story with, because again, it's a case of being vulnerable and saying, hey, I may have gotten to this point in my life, but look at the things I'm still struggling with. Look at how far I had to come. And I'm still struggling with these things. So that's important, because I feel like a lot of the times with the story is I struggled and now I'm here and everything is great. No, it's not. We're still struggling. But in that struggle, we are coping. And I think that's important. We want to find folks that are able to say these things and be vulnerable. But then to a larger extent, you know, and I didn't mention it earlier, you know, NAMI does have resources and things of that nature on our websites, also at namipgc.org, as well as NAMI National, NAMI.org, that we have resources for folks to use. Because I mentioned we serve more as a clearinghouse and more of a bridge, as I would put, between folks and, you know, the resources they need, and or folks and whatever therapy services they need. We're sort of that bridge for a lot of people. Okay. So yes, we have these resources, but again, most importantly, it's finding someone that people connect with and can say, I see my story in this woman. I see my story in this man.
Right. Oh, definitely. Yeah, you just gave us an idea for a subsequent podcast episode, because what you just shared with Megan and her degree, which is not publicized or knowledge, you're the first one that I've heard this from. And so I'm glad you shared that. And it's so central to the message of the Black Women's Wellness Agency and the podcast, that our wellness is infinite, that it's not boxed in, that we can be a rapper, singer, artist, and have a degree in healthcare administration and maybe not explicitly utilizing that degree yet, but have the skills and the knowledge in our toolkit that who knows 2 years, 3 years down the road where Megan will apply that and what that will look like in a business that she creates that merges all of that. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and the creativity and what wellness looks like for Black women is that it's infinite. It's not boxed in.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if we're looking at correlations, I see Megan in you versus, you know, and vice versa.
Say
Megan,
that. Oh, say it. You received it.
You went from, you know, the degree of your master's in public health, and now you're an entrepreneur, which traditionally for most folks, people that venture into entrepreneurship have MBAs and things of that nature. Yeah. So you also weren't boxed in regards to where you started and where you are now. So again, it's a case of seeing yourself in someone and using that to build that community around yourself. So yeah, it's absolutely there. It's absolutely there.
Oh, I love that. Adaeze, you just speaking and we claiming it. We're hearing it here.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. 2023 is our year.
Right?
It has to be.
I love that. And, you know, I hate that we're ending this episode. We could have so many other questions, but how do you think that we as Black women can really give it? And I love, you know, you sharing your experience and your journey, but how can we in this new year really get off of the cycle of what we have been led to believe of overproductivity and overextendedness and grind culture, and truly shift the paradigm and the narrative for ourselves to focus on our wellness? Like you and I, we have our master's in public health. We could talk about all the public health data and the correlations of wellness and your life expectancy and outcome, but getting it to us of we want to live. Black women are under attack in this racist system, every system, racist medical care, health, housing, education. We can name all the other systems. and I'm saying this a very long-winded question, but how can we, and I know it's not one size fits all, but how can we start to make it a priority in the same way that we prioritize our meetings that are on our Google Calendar or our date nights or all of the other things that we hierarch in a way that sometimes our own just falls by the wayside?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what I started off the podcast with, right? It's just setting boundaries. And to a greater extent, it's also understanding what your current role is, right? So for Black women, we're usually expected to be the caretakers. We're usually expected to have it together. We're usually expected to be strong. All these adjectives that are attached to being a Black woman. So I think it's so important that we just first recognize what role we're currently playing and work backwards to start setting those boundaries. Will it be hard? Yes. But at the end of the day, it's going to be important. So I say all this to say baby steps, right? So boundaries may be the first thing. And then there might be something else that you may implement. You may implement some wellness activities, meditation, things of that nature that help center you at the end of the day. But you got to start somewhere. And it's so important to have that first step. It's a work in progress. As I said about myself, it's a work in progress. There are times I do slide in, especially for mom, if she does see this podcast. You know, there's just that connection there that's so hard because you're just like, she's mom. But it's really, really important. It's very important to start setting boundaries very early on because it's going to take time. It's going to take time.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good recommendations for us. And also, as you're highlighting that we are not actualized, that it's not as if, 2023, I'm never struggling with this. It's the constant, regression, repair, rupture, repair, ebbing and flowing. And that's something we have to start sharing, that it's not, I'm well. Wellness is the life journey. It's the lifestyle of so many things that you're talking about, boundaries and grace and just, as you said, the small little steps starting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So one step at a time and one day at a time too. So
This has been so great. I have loved this conversation. And as we're ending, I want to hear what last words of wisdom and advice would you want to share with our listeners and our audience?
Yeah, I think I've been sharing it all throughout. It's been a constant theme, just start setting those boundaries early. And, most importantly, understand where you are. And I'm not talking in sense of economic status or anything of that nature. Understand the role that you play in your life in relation to your family, in relation to anyone else. And I say this because for myself, for so long, I have been the people pleaser. So then I had to understand, why are you the people pleaser? And work backwards. And for anyone else, if you're an overachiever, understand, why are you an overachiever? And work backwards. And once you understand who you are, because that's essentially what I'm asking folks to do the work of understand who you are, then you can then implement what those boundaries will be. So if I have nothing else to say, it is start with the work of understanding who you are.
That is good. Adaeze, where can folks find you? How can they connect with you after listening to this episode? If there's just more that they want to hear more of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to reach out to me at Adaeze. So ADAEZE .OKONKWO and NAMIPGC.org. And that is my NAMI address. So if you reach out to me, I will certainly send out resources in regards to whatever your needs may be and connect you to other NAMI resources as well. And I can certainly put that in our chat for folks as well that would like to connect with me.
Wonderful. That is great. Are you active on social media, or is that your safe?
I am. Well, let me put it this way. I'm active in the sense of I look, but I don't post. I'm giving out the email because
Okay.
I'm more likely to respond to that than I am to
Okay.
respond to a social media. But I think I did share my social media links with your administrator, who is free to also share with your audience as well. I would do my best to respond to it, but social media is not my strong suit. I just look, I don't really post. I'm a browser.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that. I had my sister on here and she shared that social media for her is a part of her wellness, that she doesn't give it out because she doesn't want people tagging her. She doesn't want to comment. It's for her to just, like you said, browse. And sometimes we need that. So I respect that.
Yeah. Feel free to reach me within all those mediums. But if you want a response, the email. The email is your best bet. And if you want a faster response, feel free to also reach out to me via my personal email, which is Adaeze02@gmail.com, which again, I will post and or share with Adaeze to share with everyone else.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes for sure. This is great. Thank you for being here. Thank you again for your vulnerability and just transparency and just really realness. I am so thankful, and I know our listeners are as well. And we thank you all for listening to this episode of the Black Women's Wellness Podcast. Continue to check out our bi-weekly episodes, subscribe, like, connect, and follow us on our website, thebwwa.com. We always want to hear from you. We love engaging with our community. So leave messages. What resonates for you with our episode today with Adaeze? What are your thoughts? What do you want to hear more of? Our handle on Instagram is the THEBWWAINC. That's across all platforms. And until next time, stay well and remember our wellness is infinite. See you soon.